So we're looking at tracking over the road, events relating to entering the marine terminal, being loaded on a vessel, ocean transportation, and then the same thing on the other side. And you know, this is a big project. Yeah, and I think what we're finding as we go and engage with the participants in the ecosystem is we thought that it was about visibility, we thought that it was about paperless customs clearance, and the dispute resolution is what I keep hearing people say, say back to me as their primary interest in all of this is, when things fall off of that happy path, how do I get back on it? How do I, deal with the charges, so on and so forth. And then, one other thing I'll say where we are working is also in food safety. So we have a project where we are tracking pork from farm to table in China, and that one has been very interesting as well. So that uses the provenance aspects of blockchain. And again, big problem, so definitely still ongoing.
But you still have a smile when it's solving the big problems. I think you're having fun doing it. Aljosja?
We have developed together with ABN AMRO, which is a Dutch bank, and Exact, a Dutch IT supplier, a blockchain solution for inventory financing, where our clients are logistics service providers that have inventory under their roof, which belongs to a number of their clients. Most of these clients, they are small and medium-sized companies which have trouble getting access to financing in the Netherlands because banks don't find it too interesting anymore. And there's another problem that inventory financing is a relatively expensive form of financing because it is a lot of paperwork, a lot of controls you have to put into place, a lot of audits. So we designed a blockchain solution where basically we use the LSP as a kind of consolidator to put all these small SMEs together, make it one big inventory to be financed, and then that becomes interesting for banks because the total value of the inventory is much higher than if they would finance each party individually. We have hooked it up to the backend system of ABN AMRO. In September we're going to start to do a number of trials with real money and real inventory. What we have done is that the information, we use the public Ethereum network, and the information we put on the Ethereum network is a hash of the data. But we allow interested parties, after using a digital token that is also driven by blockchain technology and the cryptography that lies behind it, to access data within the ERP system of, for example, a logistics service provider. So when I submit an invoice stating the value of the goods, and I'm a bank and I'm interested in financing this, and I ask the logistics service provider, can you please allow me access to this specific part of your system where you store this specific document, and allow me to verify that this document is really the document that you have put forward for the financing part. And through a cryptographic dance, I'm not going to go into the mathematical details, but it is possible to allow, in a very secure way, the party requesting that information access to the system that is stored somewhere decentralized, and they will only see that information. They can run their own hashing algorithm over it and can verify whether it returns the same hash, and then they know it's also exactly the same information. It's quite it's still a very primitive kind of application, in the sense that it does what it is supposed to do. But there are other things that we want to do next. We want to add more banks to it, because you want to be able to get the best possible offer. And we're lucky enough that a bank like ABN AMRO is saying, I want more banks on this system, because we believe that that is going to create value. We also are developing this idea, what we call a digital ghost. You can't put physical stuff on the blockchain, it's unfortunately impossible. But you can try to put as much as possible information on the blockchain. And by doing that, you can create a digital ghost of that asset. And with more data, you can get a better view of these actual physical assets that are there. And you can do that in several ways. You can check the system where the data is stored and say, okay, you now submitted this information, but show it to me in a different way. For example, if I submit inventory, then I want to see the inventory data list that the logistics service provider creates for himself. Or he submits data to customs. If the inventory data or the invoice data that he submits to customs is different than the invoice data that he submits for financing, there's something wrong. And that is something that we try to develop further and further down the road. But we're going to start, as I said, in September with real money, real inventory, and yeah, we're going to take it from there. So that's real. That's a concrete use case that we're working on, where we have built up quite some substantial knowledge using the public blockchain in a secure way.
Thank you. Thank you very much. One quick, your view.
Yeah. So, we've talked about banking, finance, and supply chain as two big applications. And the third one was what Dave from EY mentioned, which is security, data security. So I think that rounds out the top three. And let me just put this slide in that context. We've seen a lot of interest in IoT, in the supply chain, and generally in enterprises from a performance optimization point of view. Right? By monitoring all this, you can optimize your assets, utility, etc., utilization. But I think there's a new class of applications for IoT that can come about with the combination of IoT and blockchain. Essentially, this is the idea of trusted information coming from IoT devices. So whereas performance data from IoT devices is not that, there's not as much of a trust concern, when an IoT sensor can actually trigger a payment, as we showed in shipment of bales of cotton from the US to China, where Wells Fargo and Commonwealth Bank of Australia were involved. The movement of that container through an IoT signal actually triggered the payment to the seller in the smart contract, which was actually governing that letter of credit in that case. And so because we did that, and we did that last year, we realized the value of trusted signals from IoT devices. So we got together with Chronicle, who is another blockchain startup we've been talking to for a while, and the two of us actually brought this consortium together that you see, and it had its initial founding just last month in terms of becoming open to participants generally. So these are the founding members. Already about 30 or 40 other companies have indicated interest in joining, and the entire purpose is to explore the space of applications that are opened up in this combination of blockchain and IoT, the idea of secure IoT. Just to follow up on the sort of pilot that we did with Wells Fargo and CBA on that shipment of bales of cotton, what they expressed to us as well, we got to have standards around this. It's all nice, we would love to see this sort of be generally deployed, but obviously in a very heterogeneous industry like the supply chain and trade, one needs standards so that everybody adopts it. And so what that led to is essentially we propose to form some standards to make this happen in BAF, which is the Bankers Association for Finance and Trade, and I'm the chair of one of the committees that's trying to standardize that, so that what we showed there can be more broadly adopted by many more banks. And just recently, we're working with actually a consortium of 3 banks that we will be announcing, further developments in that regard. So this relates to, the whole removing paper, going to a paperless system with trusted IoT.
So Ranga, thank you very much on this. Do we have questions from our audience before I'll go back to my standard question? You're right there? Eric? Just one side.
Yeah. Have you guys implemented, or is anybody implementing this into secure debt transactions in the sense of when you have a security interest on inventory and it's constantly turning over, right? You have a huge question about what's happening with that inventory and where is it going and what have you. So the idea being, you have a security interest on 500 TVs theoretically. At Best Buy, you file a UCC financing statement, right? It comes in, one of the TVs sold. You get paid immediately. Your security interest gets paid down. Theoretically, you could relimit inventory if there's no reason, but is that type of thing happening at all? Or is it really just focused on kind of removing paper?
So replenishment, real-time dynamic replenishment, visibility, trigger-based payment systems, those functionalities are fully built out in the supply chain.
And specifically in the secure debt context, I guess. I'm a lawyer, so.
Yeah, no, we want the legal perspective on this.
Also, I mean, I think the question is, your question was specifically if we're doing that already from a blockchain standpoint. You know, for me, I would say no, we're not there yet, essentially. The concept and the use case makes sense, and logically and technically, there doesn't seem to be any limitation to be able to putting that into reality from a blockchain standpoint. But no, we haven't gone down that path of executing on that case.
You want to add something to that?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. What you described is completely within the realm of what's feasible. I think it's finding the right parties and partners who want to do it. So I think basically, if there is an asset that is securing a debt and the sale of that asset triggers the payment, it's something that, for example, our system could do. We just haven't found a customer who wants to do that yet. So.
And that's where I think, if I could, there is not shortage of use cases that have relevancy and the technology being applicable against those. And a lot of companies are going down the journey of, exploring in the form of a POC to a pilot to, a certain level of adoption. The challenge which we can all collectively contribute to solving is how do we get more and more parties onto the chain against a use case to make it more broadly applicable for the enterprise or for whatever other setting you're talking about. That's what we need to solve for as one of the big challenges around the adoption of this technology, which again, there's a maturing curve to it, and that will happen over time as well, but we can all contribute to lessen that time from the standpoint of getting people to know about it and be more open to getting onto the network.
Yeah. So go ahead, you're on.
Yeah, in the Netherlands, there's a company called Transfollow. They designed a digital waybill. So it's a CMR that is totally 100% lawyer-proof. Let me put it like that, for lack of a kinder word. And they developed it, first using old-fashioned technology. Now they teamed up together with ABN AMRO and the Port of Rotterdam. And what they have done is that this waybill is being put as a hash on the blockchain. And because it's considered to be a receipt of the goods by the client, it automatically triggers an invoice from the logistic service provider to that client, and automatically that the bank can buy that invoice from the logistics service provider at a discount, of course, and then they collect the money from the end receiver. And that is 100% totally legal, and that is the law allows to do this. So it's really it's by signing a waybill or signing the CMR that is really a legally binding. That you, if you ever get into a contest in a court because somebody says, yeah, but you didn't deliver the goods or there was a shortage or whatever, then you can write it down on the CMR, and if it's not there, it's not legal.
Excellent perspective. So let me actually, I think we're actually coming up to the close time here, but quick, 30 seconds answers, okay? 2020, blockchain in supply chain. Is it real, or is this fact?
For sure, real. 2020, yes, absolutely. I mean, given the adoption rate that we're seeing, you know, with clients wanting to explore, and there's a little bit of a first mover advantage, you know, here as well. But yes, I'd say it's real.
So you're optimistic?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And I think a lot of it's going to come from developing nations and from small to medium enterprises, you know, folks who don't have billion-dollar investments in existing ERP systems. So we're going to see generation skipping in terms of technology. So yes, it will be widespread, and I think it's going to come bottom up.
That's a phenomenal insight, Aljosja.
Yes, period.
Yes, period. I love it.
Yeah.
That's why you guys are always in front of these traits. Appreciate it.
Well, I don't know. I think that one of the things that I've been presenting a lot about blockchain and how we do it in the Netherlands, and you know, being here in the US, I see people who are just as talented and brilliant, I think, or some of them are even more brilliant. But I think that what we're really good at in the Netherlands is building consortia and getting people together. I mean, doing blockchain between two parties makes no sense. You need a decentralized setting. And somehow it's in our DNA to work together with different cultures, different requirements, different political aspects, and somehow we find a solution to make it work. And I think that is why we're perhaps, it's not really the technical part, but more the softer part that the Dutch are.
And I'm going to come up with my reflection on this. What that's actually a segue for me to actually close this out.
Yeah.
Ranga, you're 2020.
So, absolutely, but I'll connect it to two other things. You know, I really enjoyed the machine learning AI thing presented by the folks at Google, kind of eye-opening. And I think that the trustworthy data that blockchain is going to bring is going to, you know, enable applications of AI in there. So that's going to be one connection that will come about, I think, by 2020. The other is, you know, you heard about all these tokens, this whole explosion of coins, and, you know, people raising $200 million in crowdfunding in a matter of minutes. And that token aspect is going to play a role in blockchain in terms of allowing a different dynamic of transforming early adopters of technology to becoming advocates, and it's going to change the whole marketing way that technology gets out to customers.
Thank you so much. Let's take a big round of applause. Before we walk so, before we walked into this plenary session, I'd ask you a question. Raise your hand if you knew blockchain. I'm going to ask the same question. Raise your hand now. You know a little bit more than when you came into this conference about the blockchain. So how many? Right, so we made some sizable dent here. So I still have some folks that we need to. So next year, this topic will still be plenary session next year. Let me just give you a quick reflection. I consider this transformation of blockchain in supply chain similar to when the wireless communications came about. Right? We went from the landline to the mobile communication. I think what our partners from Netherlands were talking about, right? That government policy standardization has a huge role to play. Imagine if every small individuals will go out and start to create smaller set of standards. We would create the blockchain in the same mess as our existing system where nobody talks to each other. So my big concern and reflection on this thing is that there is a need for the policy, need for some sort of global standards, and people need to kind of create this on a very broad spectrum so that this blockchain supply chain is much different than the systems that we're currently dealing with, which is the silo. It's a huge friction. Right? So with that, I would like once again, Gaurav, Aljosja, and Ranga, thank you so very much for being here and stimulating.